Thank you, Sylvan. Don't worry, I will mention all of our nice work explicitly with QR codes. Welcome, everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch break. My name is Julia. I'm here from the Small Arms Survey, representing the Small Arms Survey. I'm a researcher there. I focus on arms trade and trafficking and on gender and small arms, but we will not talk about gender and small arms today. We will focus on the trafficking part. It's the first time that our organization is present at Le Hague. So please bear with me. We are very academic. I will try to skip through the too theoretical parts as much as possible. Basically, today I will just talk a bit about how we use OSINT as an organization to research authorized trade, licit arm flows, and trafficking, illicit one. There is a big conversation, even within our organization, about how we use OSINT, whether we use it efficiently enough, and what to improve. A little bit about ourselves, since I know, or I guess not everyone is familiar here with us. We are a Center for Applied Knowledge in the field of proliferation and control of small arms, their associate parts, and ammunition. We are based in Geneva, Switzerland. Actually, it's our anniversary this year. We are celebrating 25 years. You see in the right-hand corner, our upper corner, our very nice glass building in Geneva. We are working in over 50 countries, and we are currently more than 30 people, I think, from various disciplines, forensics, ballistics, but also international affairs, conflict studies, development studies, and so on. And our mission is basically to strengthen the capacity of governments and practitioners to reduce illicit armed flows and armed violence. We have many partners. We work with governments, regional organizations, research institutions, international organizations, and of course NGOs. You will see some of them here. I will not walk you through all our projects, but I will mention some in the course of my presentation. It's just important to know that not all of our projects are OSINT based. So we do have some projects where we work with governments, with regional organizations, where we get data from them. However, some, for instance, here we have the Caribbean project, relies heavily on OSINT, as we will see. Importantly, we do not only use OSINT, we also produce OSINT for others to use. We have global databases, for instance, our global violent death database, which measures violent deaths all around the world, homicides, conflict deaths, killings in judicial intervention, so by law enforcement. So if you're interested in that, please have a look. Please check out the database. Gives you also a good reality check about where people in the world die the most. It might not be the countries or regions which you think. Our most famous database is the Global Firearms Holdings one. It's a database where we measure the arms around the world in hands of civilians, of law enforcement, and of military. This is a major effort. So we are updating this database only every 7 years, and the next time will be actually in this year, in the second half of 2024. If you have ever read something about the Small Arms Survey, it was probably in connection to this database, probably critique from, for instance, the US government that we overestimated their numbers. But yeah, so if you're connected to that at all, professionally, personally, please stay tuned. Please have a look when it's out. Our last one is a database which very few people know. We are measuring accidents which happen around the world on arms storage and ammunition sites. So before I begin with my presentation and explain you our methodology, I'm very sorry, but I do have to give some definitions, otherwise you will just not really understand what I'm talking about, because arm doesn't equal arm. When we talk about conventional arms, so not chemical, not nuclear weapons, but conventional arms, they are typically divided into 3 categories: heavy, small arms, and light weapons. We as a survey, we work with small arms and light weapons. We do have some projects which touch upon heavy arms, however, they are not our main focus. And if you think now that, oh, small arms, light weapons, guns, boring, no. Please don't read through all the definitions. just remember, small arms, light weapons. It's not only handguns, it's not only revolvers or pistols, it's actually much, much more. It includes heavy machine guns, light machine guns, assault rifles, portable anti-tank guns, portable anti-aircraft guns, portable launchers of anti-tank missiles and rocket system, portable launchers of anti-aircraft missile systems. So basically everything short of helicopters, attack helicopters, tanks, warships, everything short of this heavy machinery. We are working with it, we are dealing with it. If it would be only guns, our work would be much faster done. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. What are licit and illicit arm flows? Licit arm flows, when we talk about licit arm flows, we mean the authorized trade, export, imports, and all other legal arms transfers, such as donations, which are happening quite often in the last years. And then illicit arm flows, or trafficking, as we call it, it's weapons which are produced, transferred, held, in violation of laws and regulations. And you might wonder why. Why should we care about monitoring arms, both licit and illicit? Why should we measure them? Here we have a small snapshot from the Global Violent Death Database, which I mentioned earlier. It's from 2021. The data for 2022 to 2023 is not out yet, because it simply takes always 1-2 years for all the data to be updated. You see in 2021, 45% of people killed around the world were killed with a firearm. And as you see with those little triangles in some regions of the world, we are talking about the Americas, this percentage reaches up to 80-70%. And currently we're also the first time since 2016 that firearm-related deaths are on the rise again. And so this was the picture in 2021, and I can guarantee you 2022 and 2023 did not make it look better. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory why we measure illicit arms. You might ask yourself, why should we care about the authorized trade in arms? Why should we care about export imports? Well, very importantly, in conflict and war scenarios, you have to care, you have to monitor import-exports to assess what will happen when the war is over in a post-conflict scenario. The last time in Europe we had a situation where after a huge war, there was a lot of guns spilling over to the whole continent was the Balkan Wars. And as you all know, we have currently another war going on in Europe. So it's important to keep this situation in mind. And even in non-conflict scenarios, it's important to assess the risk of diversion, so the risk of legal arms being stolen, sold, and so on to the black market. For countries with trafficking problems, for instance, we see that in the Caribbean region, we see it with countries like Papua New Guinea. Even if they import a small amount of arms, those small amounts can enter the black market and end up having very strong detrimental effects on the countries. Illicit arms, why we measure illicit arms, I think, of course, the most important point to keep in mind, what are illegal guns or illegal arms used for? Probably not for hunting purposes. So illegal guns do have a detrimental impact on everything in a country, on human security, on political stability, on economic development. Really, there's barely an area not touched by illicit firearms. For instance, we have a project in the Caribbean where we estimated that it costs the countries in the Caribbean region 2 to 8 times their GDP to treat a single fire shot wound, which sounds insane, but it is unfortunately the truth. And another important point is that we need to detect new emerging trafficking patterns and emerging risk, especially what concerns technology. PMFs, privately made firearms, 3D printed firearms. It's important to monitor illicit trade of arms, to alert governments, to alert civil society and law enforcement to those risks. Again, in the Caribbean, we just last month had a situation update coming out, which was warning law enforcement that there is an uptick in trafficking of conversion devices. Conversion devices are small small things, small accessories, they convert a normal gun into an automatic one. So automatic fire, much more bystander deaths, much more dangerous, harder to control. So let's start with the beef. Let's start with the explanation on how we monitor small arms flows, and we will start with the legal ones, with the trade. So for the legal arms trade, it's important to know that apart when we rely on governmental data, which is provided to us by the governments, it's completely based on OSINT, and it's something everyone can research, even if you don't have any experience, knowledge with arms identification. We rely mainly on 4 sources of authorized trade: government reports, customs data, industry data, NGO research institutions, and their databases. Government reports, yes, of course, you can find national government export reports. However, for some countries, it's easier said than done. For some countries, they are not publicly available, not uploaded, not online available. It's a very, very tedious undertaking. So we prefer personally to rely on the UN-ROCA database. It's the United Nations Register of Conventional Arms. Or the ATT reports, those are reports to the Arms Trade Treaty. However, UN-ROCA, of course, the United Nations has much more member states than the Arms Trade Treaty, and often countries use the same report for both databases, so there's a duplication. I find that people are always surprised to know that UN-ROCA is publicly available online for everyone to see, for everyone to view. And I think people don't really keep the UN in mind when they do research on arms, because UN, certain people have certain attitudes towards this institution. We all know Security Council, Human Rights Council, but they do have some very, very efficient, very nice databases. So here, just a screenshot of the UN-ROCA database of the interface. You can select the countries. Here, for example, I selected Austria. You can select whether you want to see major conventional arms, heavy arms, or small arms and light weapons. Here are the categories of heavy arms. Here you can very nicely see what heavy arms are: very large, heavy machinery like battle tanks and warships. You click on the country, you click on the weapons which interest you, you get the following overview where you have the exports, in this case, of Austria, presented by trading partners, or when you click here, by years, and again, separated by the different categories. You click on one of those export bubbles, and you will get the following pop-up window. Here it shows us Austria's exports of large caliber artillery systems in the year 2002 to the United Kingdom, and I think that was 2012 to Germany. And when you look at this, you might already see the first limitation of government databases. It's very nice that UN-ROCA shows us the exporter and the trading partner, the importer, but you see Austria reported one item. What did the United Kingdom report? Has submitted a report, but didn't mention any transaction of this country of this type of weapon. Very often, more often than not, exporter and importer side do not match. Then another major shortcoming of this database, you see here, Austria, very nice, put a description. What they transferred was an M109A, and even put a comment that this was to be used as a museum exhibit in United Kingdom. However, here, those 37 units of the large caliber artillery system, nothing, no comments, no description, and you cannot force countries to put comments or descriptions. Often there are none. Very short, just to show you also what an ATT report looks like. It's basically a PDF where countries cross what kind of weapons they exported, they give the units, and they give the value. Again, both ATT and UN-ROCA are available online, publicly available. If you're interested in researching major heavy arms, this is the first place to start. So government reports, we saw they are self-reported. On the one hand, that means that they are the most authoritative source. It's a source, especially when you work with governments, which you should definitely use. However, because they're self-reported, they depend a lot on transparency practices and political will. I think you can all think of countries which will report and of countries which will not. And this might distort your picture because, for instance, a country like South Korea, great transparency practices, reports most part of their weapons. If you just take UN ROCA and no other database next to it, no other source, you will get the impression that South Korea is the biggest exporter of the Asian region, which is not true. Then again, they vary in the level of detail. Some provide details, some don't. And the data is quite difficult to aggregate. So they don't give you an Excel sheet. You really have to sit there and put unit per unit per unit per hand together in an extra Excel sheet. It's incredibly cumbersome, incredibly tedious. Customs data, the second source we use quite often. So data reported to a system by the customs who treat the export imports. The best source there is out there, I'm sorry, it's the best one. I love it personally, is UN Comtrade database. It's the customs data compiled, again, by the UN Statistics Division. This is what it looks like, and you can use it not only for arms trade. It's a database. I'm always very surprised that people don't know about it. You can research any kind of trade, banana, oranges, Playmobil, I don't know, you name it, you can research anything with the UN Comtrade database. It is based on HS codes. Those are codes developed by the World Customs Organization. I will show you a bit later, just to qualify the products around the world. And you can see the data is segregated: product, trading partner, flow, year, etc. Let's take an example of an HS code we use quite often, 930320, which are firearms, sporting, hunting, or target shooting shotguns. It's a shotgun HS code, including combination shotgun rifles. We put here the HS code, we put the period we're interested in, which is 2019. The reporter, we take a lot, again, Austria, I'm very sorry if we have any Austrians in the room, but I went alphabetically. Partners, you click all, so all means all countries of the world. You click on export as a trade flow, and then you get the following overview. You see, very nice. Austria reported that it has exported in 2019 to the world, meaning all countries together, so and so many units. Here, 3,192 of those shotguns. They also give you the trade value and the weight, which is very important for ammunition, because UN Comtrade is the only database that is out there with which you can research ammunition. You can't do it with UN ROCA or governmental databases, only UN Comtrade. And yes, if you see this heading, you might already guess the major challenge with UN Comtrade, that the description is quite broad. It's very, very broad. You can't distinguish between MK47s, between RPG7s. It gives you just an overall description of the arms, of the guns. That's why it's very nice to provide overall trends, like this in this country imports a lot of small arms, this in this country imports less small arms, but you cannot get detailed data. It does have more data than any government database you will ever find anywhere, because probably customs feel more comfortable sharing this data because it's so broad. A major limitation is that you cannot research heavy arms with this database, only small arms. HS codes are available only for small arms. Heavy arms are in there somewhere, hidden in between different codes. The World Customs Organization has been working on it since 2016. They are promising us an update, to give us an update on which HS codes to use to research other arms. But then another problem is that misqualification by customs often happens. So either the customs just click on the wrong field, or they really misqualify the product. We had a case where I was researching the Indo-Pacific, and one country, one small Indo-Pacific island state, reported that it imported millions and millions of rifles. So more rifles than they have inhabitants. So unless everyone, has 100 rifles at their home in this island state, we know it's definitely a mistake, and therefore you need to be very cautious. They also depend on political will, much less than government reports. This is actually something we learned in the last half a year when we were researching a country which suddenly took out all of their data, all of their import data from UN Comtrade of small arms and light weapons. Industry data is another source you can use to research arms trade. I will not go into detail with this because usually it's subscription-based private platforms like Import Genius and Janes. I guess everyone knows at least Janes, who is in our industry. Import Genius is based on shipment records, but it has only data for 18 countries. It does include a lot of data, so this is an example what an Excel from Import Genius would look like. They have data on the shipment company, company of origin, company to which it's exported. Very useful, but only for 18 countries. We as an organization use it only for one. Also very, very costly. Janes, just to give you a quick view what the Janes newsletter looks like. Again, very costly. They usually base their findings on media monitoring. Since we personally have a very good media monitoring practices in place, I will talk about it a bit later. We do not rely on Janes too much, but I know other organizations definitely do. So industry data is often very limited to specific countries, often subscription-based. It's difficult to research it without a subscription, without such a portal. It does not always cover governmental transfers, which is a major shortcoming. And then we have some questions as an organization about transparency and research methodology for most of them. We prefer, for instance, NGOs and research institutions. There are tons and tons. There are a lot of NGOs and research institutions focusing on arms trade. We are just one of them. You have CPRI, you have the Forums on Arms Trade, you have Kiel Institute. Just to show you very quickly, if you're interested in researching heavy arms, for instance, tanks and so on, CPRI is great. They have an arms transfer database. You get a lot of information from them. However, they do not include small arms and light weapons. Forum on Arms Trade has data, very detailed data, but only on certain countries and for a certain period of times. They do have, for instance, a whole page dedicated to Ukraine. They track all the weapon transfers to Ukraine since 2021, and the same with Israel, and then other countries which are on the political agenda right now, which is one major shortcoming for NGOs and research institutions. It really depends on political interests and donor interests. It's sad to say, but not all countries are interesting enough for various donors, for various countries. So you will have some countries covered a lot by a lot of research institutions, by a lot of NGOs, and some countries not covered at all. And yeah, so one example of what we did with the survey, it will be published in August. If you want to have a look what it looks like to take all those databases together of authorized trade and try to create a baseline. It's our research in the Indo-Pacific. There will be a whole chapter on authorized trade. As you see, it's quite difficult. You have so many data sources. They do not match. They also often contradict each other. So it's a process which, for that reason, cannot be automated. You really have to have a researcher looking through all the data sources, analyzing them together, trying to create a baseline, trying to say this in this country imports, exports, XYZ. Now we come to the illicit arm flows, the trafficking, which I think is a bit more interesting, although requires more technical know-how, let's say. We are using media monitoring and photo identification to research weapons trafficking. We also use court cases, which I find a lot of people, when they research trafficking, completely ignore, as well as social media and social media monitoring. Media monitoring newsletters, we are very basic. We use Google Alerts, InnoReader, Mention, or sometimes customized newsletters by partners. So we would get a Google Alert, for instance, I'm researching the Caribbean. So here we have St. Lucia. We have an article by St. Lucia which mentions illegal guns and ammunition. We would go on this article. We would read the text, the accompanying text, and then we will check the photos. Photos like this, for instance. And this is where the photo identification comes in place. Often, I would say 80% of the time, news articles do not identify the weapons at all, or do not identify the weapons correctly. So this is where we as researchers, we look over hundreds and hundreds of photos trying to identify what we see. For instance, here in the left photo, you see, those are all photos, by the way, from Trinidad and Tobago. You see this very small metal pimple kind of thing. This is a conversion device. That means what's in front of us is not a normal handgun. It's a gun which shoots automatic fire. Here in the upper corner, you would have to zoom in to see it. It's a small marking, PAT. It's a polymeric 80% fabricated weapon, which means it's a weapon which has been fabricated from a do-it-yourself kit. Very, very trendy in the US, and of course it's dripping down to the Caribbean where you can assemble weapons yourself, and they do have the small markings which we can identify. The last photo, my favorite one, this is a completely 3D printed firearm. Yeah, with identifying 3D printed firearms is a bit more difficult. You usually have to look that those firearms do not have markings, that they do not have serial numbers, and then it's about really the expertise, the experience, seeing that this is 3D printed by the shape, by the material, by the color. This is nothing which you can just... I couldn't explain you this in even half an hour. You would need to have touched them and like see them by yourself a lot of times to identify them correctly on photos. Some output examples, for instance, here, this was the situation update for the Caribbean. It is completely based on OSINT, so if you want to see what can be done with OSINT, not using any other technologies in identifying illegal firearms and illegal firearms trend, this is the one to go. Then the weapons compass, that was from last year, our Caribbean firearm study, identifying a lot of trafficking trends, weapon trends. It was partially based on OSINT, but partially also on government data. And if you're interested in identifying weapons yourself, we are having a very nice introductory guide. It's very long, I'm telling you, just beforehand, so you're not disappointed. It's a very, very long document which provides guidance on identifying weapons. But of course, realistically speaking, you have to have some hand-on-hand experience with weapons to be able to identify them correctly. So yeah, media monitoring, photo identification. We usually obtain information from seizures. This is the only way to monitor firearms trafficking. There is basically almost no other way. You have to go with what the police seizes with arms which have been caught by the police. Then we identify them based on either photos or text. We prefer photos because text, as I said, the description are often misleading. We have a preference, personally, for official law enforcement data. For us, data triangulation of partners is very important. We do go, in countries where we have partners, where we have official partners, we go with our findings to the law enforcement and ask them, do you see that as well? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, sometimes they're surprised. Yeah, a major problem with media monitoring is the dependability of language. So of course, all languages which we have present in our organization, quite a few, it's not a problem, but languages and especially alphabets which we cannot read makes media monitoring very, very difficult. Court cases, very quickly, because I find that people, when they ask us questions how to research trafficking patterns, they never think of court cases. Court cases of convicted traffickers are a great source because they provide a lot of information on the model which has been trafficked, on the trafficker, on the route of the mode of trafficking. We usually code this in an Excel sheet, and then we analyze and obtain information. For instance, from the US to the Caribbean to Central America, how are the weapons trafficked? What mode of transportation do they use? Who are mostly involved in the trafficking? But again, they are not available everywhere publicly. In the US, for instance, they are. And language remains an access barrier also in this case. So, social media monitoring. We do use social media monitoring. We have been using social media monitoring for decades. What's new for us right now is the automated scrapping of social media. Social media monitoring provides you an opportunity to research places which are not well accessible, where you can't go and do field research like Afghanistan and Haiti. And you would be surprised how much of those groups, post stuff online. For instance, Haiti, we have a lot of YouTube videos of gangs where you can see the weapons. They brag with the weapons. You can pause the videos. You can identify the weapons they hold. And yes, we create interactive data dashboards, such as for our Afghanistan project, which I will present now very shortly. Our Afghanistan project was a pilot project with which we collected data from X on the weapon, the type of actor, and geographical location. Here's the entry to the dashboard, 69,000 tweets we analyzed. This is what it looks like. You do have the original tweet. Here we have an automated translation tool integrated. And then you have the hashtags, the places, the weapons, the actors mentioned. This is what it looks like when you put it on a map. This is a zoomed-in map of Afghanistan. You do see the different tweets. You can go on the bubble and see what they said. And then when you summarize the tweets or analyze them, this is where our part comes in. That's the important part for us. For instance, you see in March 2022, there was an uptake in mentioning of AK-74s, of AKMs, of RPG-7s. And then when you look at the actors, most of them were unspecified, but here, there was a mention of AKMs, especially associated with ISIS. So this can give us some idea which actors use which kind of weapons. And we are currently looking into new opportunities for social media scrapping. We are looking at X and we are looking at Telegram. Telegram is very, very difficult for various reasons I will explain you. But if you're interested in the Afghanistan dashboard and the technical side, please contact one of those three people or me. I can put you in touch. We are currently implementing such dashboards like you saw, those ones, in two other projects, one in the Caribbean and another country. And yeah, so we are very excited about this opportunity. However, social media is still somewhat challenging for us because of the data we work with, because how sensitive the data is we work with. So of course you have the challenges you always have with big data that is circulating on different platforms. Collection, storage, analysis is difficult. But for us, it's mainly, the main challenge is the anonymity. On the one hand, it incentivizes people to share more information, to share the pictures, photos of weapons, and so on. On the other hand, however, it makes it very, very difficult to verify this information. And for us, since we work a lot, as you saw, with governments, with inter-regional organizations, international organizations, we need to verify, we need to be very solid on our fact-checking, so this is very difficult for us. Then some platforms, you know, are more censored than others. And then private channels, Telegram, WhatsApp, Signal, especially Telegram, what concerns arms, includes huge amount of information, a lot of photos, nice, great. But the terms of user compliance, they prohibit the disclosure of private messages. Currently, we do not know how to deal with that. If any one of you here works with Telegram or researches Telegram or does automated scraping with Telegram, please feel free to reach out. And yeah, then another major challenge is that while we can automate the scrapping process, you cannot automate the analysis. You will always need an expert, a weapons expert sitting behind it, verifying what we see, analyzing the trends. And this is something which cannot be automated. So if I were to summarize opportunities and challenges of arms flows with OSINT, you know, challenges you saw, there's not a single open data source. You have to get your information together from various. The data is scattered all around the internet. There's an inconsistent level of detail. The data sources contradict. Transparency and sensitivity of data is a problem because we do deal with arms, and verification, fact-checking, and of course, we cannot replace the experts yet. Small arms identification so far can only be done by experts. We do have a project where we use automatic photo identification on ammunition, which is a project I did not include in my presentation because it's not OSINT. We are using a platform which has been provided to us by one of our law enforcement partners. And so far, it does not yield the results we have hoped when compared to identification by experts. So yeah, but we also see opportunities in OSINT research for arms, especially when it comes to cooperation between NGOs, research, media institution, political and donor interest. As sad as it is, arms are a hot topic right now. A lot of people would like to research arms, so political interest is definitely there. Then again, new tech, automatic photo identification. We are looking into it. We are not yet convinced, but we are open to suggestions. I know we have like a very tech-savvy crowd here. For instance, currently we are looking for someone who is an expert in digital forensics and photo forensics. So if any one of you is at all interested into this kind of things, please reach out to me. And yeah, so there are opportunities for small arm research which we can realize with OSINT. Some of the research can be done by everyone in this room, for instance, an authorized trade. When it comes to trafficking, it remains quite difficult. There are significant challenges which continue to exist. We monitor tech developments and their implementation. We have hopes that in the future there will be some new developments which will make our work a little bit easier, because so far photo identification of weapons remains quite tedious and quite laborsome. Yeah, so I think I'm on time. Yeah, 10 minutes early. Okay, that's good. So questions, suggestions, and if you're interested in the weapons identification guide, I saw that is where most of the hands went up with the phones. Please, here you have all the QR codes compiled.
Thank you very much, Yulia. To be honest, all the guide that you've done, I use it a lot. It's very simple. Seriously, I recommend to everyone to use the guides. They are free, of course. They are very complete. And even people that does not understand, does not have any knowledge on weapons identification, and investigations, can begin with that guide. So yeah. So, do we have some questions? Feel free. Yep.
First of all, thank you for this presentation. It was crystal clear and a good first dip into the subject. You talked about detecting new trafficking pattern or emerging risk in the data trafficking, and I was wondering if you were using deep learning models for detecting these kind of things.
Thank you. So the problem with detecting trafficking patterns, I think it's not as obvious, so it could be coded into deep learning. I'm not an expert on that, but in my understanding, what I know from my work, for instance, I look through those Google alerts. Yes, I look through like 200, 500, 1,000 Google alerts, and I do see, suddenly we have a lot more young men involved in trafficking under the age of 21. Or, suddenly we have a lot of nationals from another country involved in trafficking. Or suddenly we have a lot of heroin being seized together with a firearm. So those trafficking patterns are very, very unpredictable. I'm not quite sure how we would code them into deep learning, but again, we are very open. We are absolutely not from the tech field. We are ballistic experts, we are social researchers. So if any of you have an idea of how to improve that, please feel free to reach out.
Other questions?
Thank you for the presentation. I know nothing about guns, but do you also monitor the Bitcoin transactions, like addresses used to buy, sell arms in dark web?
This is something we have been discussing in one project with one particular partner. We are so far not doing that, but we do have plans to see how we can realize that. But it's because this partner, this law enforcement agency, has a problem with that in their concrete country, so they are very interested in this.
Other questions? No? Feel free. Because after Yulia, she will left us to go in Switzerland, so...
Sorry, so I go for another one. You talked about something about Caribbean, GDP, and one helling. Would you be able to redo it? I didn't fully understand what you were talking about.
It's this project. It's the Weapon Compass, the Caribbean. Firearms study. Basically, as part of the project and as one current follow-up project, we are calculating the costs to the health sector of the region to treat firearm wounds. And the costs for treating firearm wounds are sometimes bigger than 2 times or 8 times the GDP of the entire country. The actual cost as they would be if they would build them, which was a huge wake-up call for the Caribbean region. To be fair, this is a very nice pilot project. They really reacted on that. We have a lot of follow-up projects for this one finding because they were quite shocked, and we're seeing how we can replicate this methodology now in other countries to combine public health and firearms, trafficking in firearms.
Hi. Thanks for the presentation. I was just wondering about the Afghanistan tweet monitoring. So, how long can you go? How long in time can you go back in monitoring these tweets? And is it real-time monitoring or?
It's real-time monitoring.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
It's real-time monitoring. I'm not sure when it was initiated. You would have to ask my colleague, but it is real-time monitoring.
Other questions? Nope. Oh, yeah. There is 2 more. Nice.
Hi. Do you monitor the victims, injured or dead?
I'm sorry?
Do you monitor the victims for the ammunitions, for example?
The victims. So we do monitor the victims for all of our projects which are related to public health. For the global violent death database, unfortunately, no, there it's really people who died. But for the global violent death database. But for the public health projects, we do monitor everything: victims, deaths, and also social economic impacts like income lost and things. For the photo identification of the ammunition project. Okay. To my knowledge, it's not my project, it's of one of colleague, but I can put you in touch. But to my knowledge, yes.
Do you also monitor not the whole weapons, but for example, some only sophisticated parts of the heavy arms? For example, some sophisticated electronics chips, or some parts that are, for example, for some groups in Afghanistan, hard to manufacture, so that they are imported from Europe, for example.
We do occasionally. So heavy weapons are usually not our focus, but we do have projects where we did monitor electronic chips. I will have to look into which was the latest. I think it was one project in Africa. But if you write me, I can definitely put you in touch with which project exactly that was. It is not our focus. Sometimes we do that on donor request or on requests of a specific country with whom we work, or of the police.
Hello, okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. About the illegal arm trafficking, do you happen to see the groups that operate those traffic to be specialized in arm trafficking, or are they doing other kind of trafficking at the same time, drugs, human or other?
This very much depends. Very, very much depends on the region and the countries. For instance, there is this famous nexus of drug and arms. I can tell you, for instance, for the Asia project, I wrote an overview, and in the Indo-Pacific region alone, we have groups which are non-state armed groups which engage in armed trafficking solely for the purpose of funding their operations, or solely for transferring arms to other ideologically similar groups in the region. But we also have groups which are engaged mainly in drug trafficking, and then arms trafficking is a separate income stream, so for the lack of better words, or they just use the illegal guns to protect the drugs which they are trafficking. We have regions where trafficking is very, very specific. We have some countries where political elites are heavily involved in trafficking. So the groups really, really vary, and how and why they traffic as well. If you have a specific group which interests you, you can ask about that, or a specific region.
You said something about making a book about identification of weapons. Do you have something about the 3D printed weapons, since you said it's hard to identify them?
Do we have something as like an output or guidelines?
Yeah, so like you said in the book, you can identify like the weapons or something about them. But you said the 3D printed weapons are hard to identify.
Yes.
So will there be something about it on the book?
In this particular book, no, because the particular book was from 2018. 3D printed weapons, the problem is the technology evolves very, very, very fast. Mm-hmm. So they change a lot, their shape and appearances. We do sometimes do identification courses for other NGOs or for law enforcement or for governments. But something written on identifying 3D printed weapons we don't have yet. It was easier to identify them previously because the example I showed you, I mean, it's quite obvious that this is not an industrial produced weapon, because you see it kind of looks 3D printed, although it has not been identified as such. It has been actually misidentified in the news article. But now we have more and more 3D printed weapons which really do like industrial produced part. We have in some regions that they even put fake serial markings, and then it becomes incredibly difficult to identify them, even for experts, let alone for novices in this field.
Thank you. Other questions? Does somebody have some questions? No? Oh, yep, I'm coming. By the way, I don't know, I guess I lose the other microphones if somebody see it.
Do you have an estimation with regards to how much of the weapons you don't have under tracing? Like how much of you're missing in terms of tracing weapons? Like specifically in regions such as Afghanistan, like, because I mean, many pieces and weapons are imported from countries like Pakistan, and much of it is not traceable. So do you have an estimation, more or less?
Wow, I don't think anyone could give you an estimation of more or less of what we don't know that we don't know. But we do have in the global firearms holding database, I will not go back there, there's always an updated estimation of how many firearms are not registered. So another way to say it's not registered. I'm not familiar with the latest number we have on the global firearms holding database estimation, but also we do not have a global project which globally tracks illegal firearms. We really focus on the specific countries and regions. So no, I'm sorry, I cannot assist you with that.
Hello, as you said at the beginning, we need to know where are the weapons, especially now that we have more wars going on. How do you think your work will impact the future of the different countries? Will it raise awareness of what the countries will need to do to prevent all those weapons created by the different wars to, if possible, disappeared?
Yes, so we do have a project focusing on the current ongoing war in Ukraine. We do have a project focusing on we are monitoring trafficking and emerging patterns, and we do report. It's an ongoing project, so I cannot disclose you anything about the results, but we do monitor back to governments and to the European Union and to other NGOs and to other stakeholders of what we see, what we find, so they can be prepared. It's just, you need to have the knowledge of how many guns, how many arms are circulating in a country where when the war is over there will be an overflow of guns, of arms, to know what to prepare your border controls for, what to prepare your legal framework for. So yes, we do provide this kind of information to governments and political stakeholders so they can adopt laws, take preventative measures, and so on.
You said that you are in need of some like specific expertise, for example, like people that are involved in and proficient in Telegram scraping and stuff like that. Can you maybe recap, like, you know, where are you mostly lacking and what do you need from the audience?
Yeah, so via Telegram scrapping, as I said, we have a problem with the terms of user compliance, which do not allow you to disclose private messages or private chats, private group chats. And so a lot of data, we realized that when we were looking into Afghanistan, but also in some other countries which use Telegram quite often, a lot of data, this data is not available for us, and we don't know really, also we are not very sure about the terms of compliance of Telegram have been written in a kind of very, very difficult and patchy way. So we are interested in someone who did already scrapping, automated scrapping with Telegrams using also private messages, if this is possible, if this is legal, how you did it, and so on and so forth. And for the digital forensic specialist, yes, we are looking a lot into for someone who is good with photo forensics and identifying fake photos and photos which have been tampered with. We see that that's a project, this we need a lot for our US-related, Central America, Caribbean-related work.
Another questions? The last one? Nope. Well, Yulia, thank you very much.